Okay, for line plot lesson number 2, I'm going to take the data that you gave me that referenced your favorite foods. So we're going to do this the same way as we did the first lesson. So this way you get another look at it. I'll try to write smaller over here so that we don't get up into our line plot. So I think what I'm going to do to make that happen, I'm going to separate this. And put the line plot up there. Hopefully everybody can see that. So from the data that you guys provided me from answering the questions, what's your favorite food, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill in my tally sheet. And my tally sheet, again, represents how many of you chose pizza, how many chose steak, fish, and so on. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So those of you that chose pizza as being your favorite food, there were 10 people. So I would put 10. 10 of you chose pizza as your favorite. Looking over at the data, I look at the steak. How many of you chose steak as your favorite food? And there was 9 of you. 9 people chose steak. Keep going, look at fish. 4 of you chose fish as your favorite food. 1 person chose hamburger. 4 people chose fried chicken. And 6 of you said spaghetti. So there's all my data based on the results of the questionnaire that I sent out to you. So pretty simple. Look at the results. Go ahead and get it very organized so that I know how many of you chose what category. From that data, now I can create my line plot. Again, very critical. We need to create our key so that we know every mark we put on our line plot, what it represents. And in this case, my key is going to be for every X that you see on my line plot, that equals 1 student. Okay, so my key for every 1 student, so that way anybody can look at this. And as long as they have a key, they know that every time they see an X anywhere on my line plot, that means 1 person. Okay, from there, I also want to make sure that I label my line plot so that everybody that's looking at this knows what we're talking about. And in this case, our line plot is representing favorite food. So if I put it down here, favorite food. So that way, once I construct my line plot, I can see my key, so I know what all the marks mean, and I can see my title, which tells me what all the information on the bottom is. So next thing I need to do is construct my line plot. So there's my line plot. Now I'm going to go ahead and categorize each hash. This is pizza, and I'm just going to abbreviate it. Some of these are really long. On a normal line plot, you would write it. Second one, let me try to write it. I'll use a smaller. Okay, so we're going to go pizza, pizza, steak, fish, hamburger, I'm going to fried chicken, and finally spaghetti. Now, I did, if you notice, abbreviate some that were really, really long, and it's only because I don't have a whole lot of room. So here's my line plot with all my categories: pizza, steak, fish, hamburger, fried chicken, and spaghetti. I know my key, which means for every X I put, that's one student chose that. And I know what we're talking about here, which is the favorite food of the students. So I go back and I'm going to reference. My tally sheet. So how many students chose pizza? Look back on my tally. 10 people said that pizza was their favorite food. So down here, I'm going to put and represent that with X's. So you can see that 10 people said that pizza was their favorite food. Moving on to the next category of steak, look at my tally sheet, and I'm going to do 9. Now, this is very important when you are creating tally sheets. However size or whatever size you chose to make your marks, they must all be the same. So you want to keep them vertically straight, and you also want to keep them horizontally even. So I'll show you. I have 10 here, and I need to do 9. Make sure that we're keeping them relatively the same size and the same distance. See how these all match? So and that should be 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So if you do this right, you could see without having to count every single X, what's more popular, pizza or steak? Well, I could clearly see that they're all on the same plane, and this one has one more. That way I'm not having to count. That's really important, because what you don't want is to have X's like this when you also have X's like that. That's inaccurate, and it just doesn't work. So you want to keep them all the same size. You want to keep them straight up and down as you can, and in line with each other if you can. Okay? So now fish, there were 4 students that said fish was their favorite food. Hamburger only had 1 student. Fried chicken, 4 students. And spaghetti had 6. And my line plot is complete. That way you can look at this. You don't even need to see the tally sheet in order to read the line plot. You know that we're talking about favorite foods. You know that each X equals 1 student chose that food. And you can clearly see, if you do it neat enough, what was the most common food. And you can clearly see that pizza was the most common. You could see what food was the least common, being the hamburger. So by looking at this, you can really quickly determine things like that, like what was the most common, what was the least common, how many students chose steak, what was the difference, who chose more, steak or spaghetti, and you can go ahead and determine that kind of a thing. One thing that's really critical, whatever you have number-wise over here, it has to match here. So 10, 19, 23, 24, 28, 34 students. So if you add up every participant, you would have 34. You better have 34 X's over here, or you're not going to have an accurate line plot. So we know that there were 34 students that participated. Make sure you have 34. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. So there I know I'm right. I have all my data from the questionnaire that you guys answered. There were 34 of you that answered it. When I categorized it and laid it out on my line plot, I have all of you, 34. And when you're looking at this, see how nice and neat that is. You have to do the same. At some point, hopefully, I'll be able to make you do your own line plots, but you've got to make sure that you have a title that tells you what we're talking about. All your categories are listed on the bottom. Must have your key that tells you how many students chose what. So for every X is one student. Your key could change. If we had 100 kids, I may say that each X equals 5 kids. And then you would know that by looking at your line plot. You'd have less X's, but that would mean each X is worth more. But in this case, we're going each X equals one student, okay? So if you take a look at this, definitely want to make sure that you're doing your tally correctly. You want to make sure that you're transferring that information from your tally over to your line plot, and that your line plot is very neat, vertically straight, horizontally and plain, and that you have your key, your title, and all your categories at the bottom.